The sound of splintering wood is not exactly what a man wants to hear before breakfast. Yet there it was again, echoing across the quiet pasture like a warning shot. My ranch gate, the one I built with my own hands, groaned against the force of Karen's shiny white SUV as it barreled through as if it were nothing more than tissue paper. The cedar cracked, the hinges screamed, and my peace shattered with every crunch of gravel beneath her tires. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because trust me, you're going to want to hear how this one ends. I had come out here for peace. After 3 decades in construction, breathing dust, chasing deadlines, and living under the constant scrutiny of HOA clipboard warriors, I wanted quiet. I wanted wide skies, grazing cattle, and a wooden gate that closed each night with a satisfying thud. My ranch was my escape, the boundary between me and a world full of petty rules. But for Karen, boundaries didn't exist. She wasn't content with ruling her subdivision. No, she had to extend her kingdom into my land, and my gate was nothing but an inconvenience to her daily routine. The first time she smashed through, I thought maybe she was lost. By the second, I knew she was testing me. And by the third, I understood the truth. She was daring me to stop her. Karen wasn't just some neighbor. She was the self-proclaimed queen of Pine Hollow HOA. A sprawling kingdom of manicured lawns, matching mailboxes, and rulebooks thicker than the state constitution, oversized sunglasses, a bob cut sharper than a hatchet, and a brand new SUV plastered with an HOA pride bumper sticker. She was the kind of woman who spoke like the law bent around her. She called it community spirit. I called it trespassing. Every time her tires chewed up my gravel drive, every time she laughed off my warnings, she was sending me a message. My land didn't matter. My effort didn't matter. And above all, my rules didn't matter. Neighbors at the feed store shook their heads when I brought it up. Good luck with that, they muttered. She runs the HOA like a little kingdom. Folks have been fighting her for years. Their advice: let it go. Let her tear down my gate week after week. Let her shave minutes off her commute at my expense. But I'm not built that way. 30 years of building homes teaches a man something about foundations. If you don't defend them, everything else crumbles. My gate wasn't just cedar and hinges. It was a line in the sand, and Karen wasn't going to erase it with horsepower and arrogance. That's so. I repaired it. Again and again. I sank posts deeper into the soil, reinforced the hinges, braced the crossbars. But each fix was met with the same sound: the low growl of her SUV, the splinter of wood, the spray of dust as she laughed in my rearview mirror. And it wasn't just her anymore. Board members followed in a smug convoy, their decals glinting like badges of honor as they turned my land into their personal highway. Then came the letter, tucked neatly into my mailbox on official HOA letterhead, a violation notice. My gate, it claimed, did not conform to community aesthetics. Remove it immediately, or face fines. Fines. From an HOA I wasn't even part of. The audacity was almost comical. Almost. I drove to the county clerk's office, dug through records, and confirmed what I already knew. My ranch lay outside their jurisdiction. My gate was mine. My land was mine. And yet, there it was, a warning shot in black ink. Karen wasn't bluffing anymore. She was declaring war. The battle escalated quickly. Every time I blocked her path, she doubled down. Every time I tried reasoning, she twisted it into arrogance. Don't be so selfish, she sneered one morning. This road saves me 10 minutes. As if my property existed solely for her convenience. By the end of the month, I'd lost count of how many times I'd repaired that gate. I'd lost count of how many times her headlights pierced the night, barreling through my land like it was her birthright. And I'd lost count of how many threats, warnings, and fake fines had landed in my mailbox. But here's the thing about me. I'm not a man who folds. You can threaten me, mock me, even laugh in my face. But when you push me past my limit, I don't break. I build. And that's when the idea began to take shape. As I gathered the splintered remains of my gate, for the umpteenth time, I thought about all the lessons I'd learned in construction. Wood rots. Hinges bend. Walls fall. But steel endures. Steel resists. Steel answers force with force. What if, I thought, the next time Karen came barreling through, she didn't just splinter wood? What if she hit something stronger, something she'd never laugh off? That night, I sat on my porch under the stars, turning the thought over and over in my mind. Karen thought she was untouchable. She thought the HOA made her queen of the world. But soon enough, she was going to learn a hard truth. Some gates don't just open. Some gates bite back. And with that, the first real plan of resistance was born. When a man's peace is shattered enough times, something inside him hardens. Each splinter of cedar, each bent hinge, each smug smirk from Karen had stacked up inside me like bricks in a wall. And when the wall was finally high enough, all that was left to do was decide how to reinforce it so it could never be broken again. Karen thought she had me cornered. To her, I was just some lone rancher without allies. A relic who could be buried beneath fake fines, bogus notices, and the weight of her influence. She believed that because she wore the HOA crown, she could make her word law. But she forgot one thing. I wasn't just a rancher, I was a builder, and builders know how to make things last. The idea started simple. Replace the wood with something stronger. But the longer I stared at the wreckage of my latest gate, the more that simple thought twisted into something bigger, sharper. Wood wasn't the problem. Karen was, and if I wanted her to stop, I needed more than just a stronger gate. I needed something that would bite back. So, I went to work. Behind my barn sat a graveyard of old projects. Steel beams salvaged from demolition jobs, rebar cages rusting in piles, concrete bags hardened into lumpy tombstones. Most men would see junk, but I saw opportunity. I dragged out the steel with chains, and my old tractor, sparks flying, as I cut beams down to size. This time, the posts wouldn't just sit in the soil. I drilled 6 feet down, poured reinforced concrete, and dropped steel cages inside, before sinking the posts like anchors. Each one could hold thousands of pounds without flinching. The frame itself I welded from crossbars thick enough to laugh at horsepower. From the road, it would look like the same rustic cedar gate I'd always had, but hidden inside was a fortress, disguised as tradition, and then I added the teeth. Just beyond the gate, I dug shallow trenches across the width of the drive. I laid hardened steel spikes inside concrete troughs, sharp enough to shred rubber like paper. Then I disguised the whole thing with gravel so it looked like nothing more than a well-maintained ranch road. If anyone tried to ram through, the gate would hold, the tires would give, and the shortcut would die right there in the dust. It wasn't just a gate anymore, it was a trap. The nights blurred together as I worked. Lantern light flickered against steel, the hiss of welding rods filled the air, and sweat poured down my back as I hammered bolts into place. My dogs kept watch nearby, their ears twitching at every sound from the road. They knew, same as I did, that this wasn't just construction, it was preparation for battle. Neighbors slowed on the main road, craning their necks to watch me sink steel into the earth. A few asked questions, but most just nodded quietly and kept moving. Around here, you don't meddle in another man's feud. You just wait for the dust to settle and hope you're not caught in it. Karen, of course, couldn't resist. By the third day, I spotted her SUV parked just beyond the property line. Engine idling, tinted windows reflecting the sun. She sat there, phone in hand, recording. I kept working, welding sparks, lighting the dusk. Eventually, she rolled down her window. I could feel her eyes burning holes in my back. "You really think you can stop progress?" she sneered. I didn't answer, not with words. I just struck another arc, let the sparks fly, and tightened another seam. Her laugh was sharp and brittle. "We'll see," she hissed before tearing off in a spray of gravel. But for the first time, I noticed something in her tone. Not arrogance, not amusement, something closer to doubt. By the end of the week, the trap was finished. From a distance, it looked just like the same humble gate I'd been patching for weeks. But up close, it was a fortress. The posts sunk deep in concrete, the beams welded tight, the spikes hidden beneath gravel, waiting like a snake in tall grass. Even the hinges swung smoother than before, oiled and balanced so the whole thing looked almost effortless. To the untrained eye, it was just another wooden gate. To me, it was justice in disguise. That night, I sat on my porch, hands blistered and aching, but heart steady. For weeks, Karen had treated me like a pushover. She thought SUVs and paperwork made her invincible. But the truth is, every bully eventually runs into a wall they can't break. And tomorrow, Karen would discover that my wall had teeth. The trap was set. All I had to do now was wait. And if there's one thing I'd learned about Karen, it was that patience wasn't her strong suit. She couldn't resist proving herself. She couldn't resist the shortcut. She'd come, and when she did, she wouldn't just hit a gate. She'd hit the end of her little kingdom. The morning sun spilled across the ranch, casting long golden shadows over the dew-soaked grass. For once, the air was still. No SUV engines in the distance. No laughter echoing across the pasture. Just peace, the very thing I had come out here for in the first place. But I knew it wouldn't last. Karen was predictable. She couldn't resist that shortcut. She couldn't resist proving that rules didn't apply to her. And most importantly, she couldn't resist showing me that the queen of the HOA was above my gate. My land, and my boundaries. So, I waited. I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, dogs curled at my feet, eyes locked on the road that cut across the hills. It didn't take long. The low growl of an engine rolled through the quiet, growing louder with each second. My heart picked up with it. There she was. Karen's shiny SUV appeared on the horizon, sunlight flashing off her windshield. She wasn't alone. A maroon minivan trailed behind, plastered with Pine Hollow HOA decals. And right behind that, a silver sedan carrying another board member. It wasn't just Karen coming for her shortcut, it was an entourage. A convoy of arrogance. They didn't slow down, not one bit. Dust plumed high into the sky as Karen pressed harder on the gas, her oversized sunglasses gleaming like a crown. Behind her, the others followed, convinced they were rolling through conquered territory. To them, my gate wasn't a barrier. It was just another nuisance. And then they hit it. The sound wasn't the sharp crack of splintering wood this time. It was the thunderous boom of steel meeting steel. Karen's SUV slammed nose first into the disguised fortress, and the impact was brutal. Her front bumper folded like a soda can. The hood crumpled. Airbags erupted inside the cabin with a deafening pop, and white smoke billowed into the sky. Momentum carried her forward another foot, but the gate didn't move, not an inch. It stood firm, anchored into the concrete, as if the land itself was holding its ground. Then came the spikes, as her rear tires skidded. They rolled over the disguised trench. In an instant, the steel teeth shredded rubber into ribbons. The hissing of air filled the air like a dying snake. Within seconds, her SUV sagged on for ruined tires, trapped and humiliated in front of the very gate she had mocked for weeks. The convoy behind her tried to stop, but it was too late. The maroon minivan fishtailed into the ditch, skidding sideways before coming to a halt. The silver sedan screeched to a stop just inches from Karen's bumper, horn blaring like a final note of defeat. And then, silence. Dust hung heavy in the air. The only sounds were the hiss of ruined tires and the distant barking of my dogs. Their hackles raised as they watched from the porch. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, the SUV door slammed open. Karen stumbled out in a cloud of airbag dust, her once perfect hair a tangled mess, her sunglasses askew, her face twisted with fury, and her voice carried across the pasture like a banshee's scream. She pointed at me as though I had committed a crime. "What have you done?" she shrieked, her words sharp enough to cut through the quiet. I didn't move, didn't answer. I just stood slowly, set my coffee cup down on the porch rail, and watched her. Her board members crawled out next. The HOA treasurer limped from the minivan, still clutching his clipboard like a weapon. The driver of the sedan buried his face in his hands, refusing to look at the wreckage. It wasn't just Karen's defeat, it was theirs. And then came the neighbors. One by one. Folks from Pine Hollow gathered along the main road, drawn by the noise and the dust. Phones came out, cameras flashed, and whispers rippled through the crowd. For weeks, they had heard rumors. For weeks, they had watched from a distance. But now, they were seeing it with their own eyes. Karen's downfall. Her SUV crumpled against the immovable wall she thought she could conquer. Karen spun toward them, face red, voice shrill. "Stop recording. This is illegal." He sabotaged the road, but the laughter had already started. A man in the back muttered, just loud enough to be heard, "Looks like the Queen's lost her crown." The crowd erupted, their laughter echoing across the fields like a chorus of justice. And me, I stayed calm, because I wasn't just relying on steel and spikes. I had been ready for this moment. Mounted discreetly on the posts were cameras, their red lights blinking. Every second of her trespassing, every shred of arrogance, every impact hit, was all recorded. Proof that Karen wasn't a victim. She was the trespasser. She saw the cameras then, and for the first time since this feud began, her face paled. Her kingdom was crumbling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. But Karen wasn't the type to admit defeat. Her voice cracked as she screamed again, pointing at me, her SUV, the gate, anything she could. "You'll regret this. The HOA will bury you in lawsuits." The neighbors laughed harder. The treasurer muttered excuses. The sedan driver sat silently in shame. And me, I just crossed my arms and waited, because I knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. Karen had been humiliated. But humiliation doesn't end a war, it fuels it. And as the tow trucks dragged away the wreckage of her convoy, I knew the next battle wouldn't be fought with SUVs and steel. It would be fought with paper, seals, and a courtroom. The wreckage of Karen's shortcut had barely cooled before the next shot was fired. I knew she wouldn't stop at humiliation. She couldn't. People like Karen didn't retreat. They doubled down, and true to form, she came back swinging not with SUVs. This time, but with paperwork. The morning after her convoy had been dragged away in disgrace, I found an envelope in my mailbox. Thick, heavy, stamped with official seals. Inside was a stack of documents, a notice of legal action. According to the papers, the HOA was suing me, not just for obstructing what they called a community easement, but for reckless endangerment, property damage, and even emotional distress. They demanded I remove my gate permanently, pay for Karen's ruined SUV, and cover damages for the so-called trauma she and her board members suffered. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Trauma from crashing into a gate they had no right to drive through in the first place. The audacity was staggering, but beneath the laughter, my blood boiled. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was war in black ink. I didn't waste time. I drove straight into town and found myself a lawyer. Martha was her name, a sharp-eyed woman with decades of property law under her belt. She flipped through the papers, shook her head, and smirked. Classic HOA overreach, she said. They don't have jurisdiction over your land, and they know it. They're banking on you folding under the pressure. Folding isn't in my vocabulary, I told her. She grinned. Good, because this is going to be fun. Within a week, Martha filed a countersuit. Trespassing, destruction of private property, harassment, fraud through bogus fines. And thanks to my hidden cameras, we had evidence for all of it. Video after video of Karen plowing through my gate, her board members following, and the aftermath of every violation. When Karen realized I wasn't backing down, she doubled down again. That was her way. 2 days later, she and her entourage stood outside my gate, waving clipboards and shouting loud enough for the whole road to hear. This man is dangerous, one board member cried. He set a trap that could have killed children. Another shouted, voice quivering with manufactured outrage. Karen stood in the center like a general, waving papers as if they were flags. We cannot allow one selfish rancher to endanger our community. He will pay for what he's done. But something had changed. Neighbors had gathered, same as before. Only this time, the crowd wasn't nodding along to Karen's speech. They were recording, whispering, shaking their heads. Some even chuckled under their breath. The tide was turning. I stepped out onto my porch, arms crossed, voice steady. You all want the truth. Watch the footage. Every single time she trespassed, every bogus fine, every threat hits all on camera. This isn't about safety. This is about control. The murmurs swelled into shouts. We're tired of the HOA bullying us. Someone yelled. Another chimed in. You tell him, neighbor. Karen's face paled beneath her makeup, but she kept screaming, lies, all lies. But her words carried less weight than before. The cracks in her kingdom were showing. The courtroom was where it all truly unraveled. Karen arrived in a bright red suit, armed with binders so thick they looked like phone books. Her board members trailed behind her like nervous ducklings. She strutted into the courthouse with her chin high, smiling at onlookers like she was campaigning for office. When the judge called the case, Karen's lawyer launched into a dramatic speech. He painted me as a dangerous recluse, obsessed with imaginary property rights. He claimed I had built a booby-trapped gate designed to harm innocent neighbors. He tried to twist the story into one of community welfare versus one stubborn man. Then it was Martha's turn. Calm, precise, deadly, Your Honor, she began. The evidence will show that my client's property lies outside of HOA jurisdiction. These fines and claims are fraudulent. And as for endangerment, the only danger here was caused by the reckless trespassing of the HOA president and her associates. She clicked a remote, and the courtroom screens lit up. There it was. Video footage of Karen's SUV slamming into my gate, airbags exploding, tires shredding, neighbors laughing in the background. Clip after clip rolled. Karen smashing through the gate, Karen sneering about community spirit, HOA members tailgating her like a convoy of arrogance. By the time it was over, the courtroom buzzed with disbelief. Even the judge raised an eyebrow at Karen's antics. And then came the moment that sealed her fate. Karen herself took the stand. For the first time, the Queen of Pine Hollow had to defend herself without her sunglasses, her SUV, or her entourage. At first, she tried to keep her composure, insisting that she was protecting community rights. But the more Martha pressed, the more her mask slipped. Finally, she snapped. I am the president, she shouted, her voice echoing off the walls. He can't defy me. He can't defy the HOA. The judge's gavel slammed. This is a court of law, not your board meeting. Sit down. Her credibility shattered in seconds. The ruling was swift. The court dismissed the HOA's claims entirely. Instead, the judge ordered them to pay damages for trespassing, harassment, and property destruction. Karen herself was fined for reckless driving, and as a final blow, the footage was admitted into public record free to be requested, copied, and, as it turned out, leaked. And leaked it was. Within days, clips of Karen's SUV crumpling against my gate went viral. Social media had a field day. Memes sprouted overnight. Captions like, "You shall not pass," plastered over freeze frames of her shocked face. Music edits turned the crash into comedy. The humiliation was complete. But humiliation doesn't destroy people like Karen. It only makes them more dangerous. And as Pine Hollow's queen sat on her crumbling throne, stripped of her authority and mocked by the world, I knew she wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. The courthouse doors hadn't even cooled from closing behind us before the fallout began. The Queen of Pine Hollow had been stripped bare in front of a judge, her kingdom mocked, her arrogance exposed to the world. And though the court's ruling had been final, the real punishment was just beginning. For the first time since I'd moved here, my mornings were quiet. No engines rumbling across the gravel, no headlights flashing through my pasture in the dead of night, no convoy of HOA board members playing at royalty on my land, just the creak of my porch chair, the low murmur of cattle, and the sweet silence I had longed for. But peace has a way of feeling fragile when you've been at war. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Karen to come storming back with a new plan, another angle, because people like her didn't vanish. They regrouped. The signs of her downfall came in whispers. Neighbors at the general store muttered about board meetings turned shouting matches. Rumors spread of members resigning, one by one, unwilling to sink with her ship. Those who had once followed her SUV like disciples now kept their distance, their HOA decals peeling quietly off bumpers. The once unshakable HOA was beginning to crack. And at the center of it all, Karen herself seemed to unravel. I saw less of her on the roads. The woman who once paraded around Pine Hollow with her sunglasses and SUV now moved like a shadow, head down, hair unkempt, avoiding the stares of those she had once ruled over. Her home, once the epicenter of board meetings and backyard wine socials, now sat quiet, curtains drawn, driveway empty. But silence, I knew, wasn't surrender. The first real sign came in the form of another envelope. This one, delivered by certified mail, stamped with Karen's name in bold letters. Inside was a settlement offer. She proposed that I take down my menacing gate and allow limited community passage. In return, she would drop any remaining complaints, cover a fraction of my legal fees, and present it as a healing gesture to move the community forward. Healing gesture, after months of harassment, trespassing, vandalism, and humiliation. She had the gall to frame her offer as if she were the peacemaker, as if she were doing me a favor by allowing me to bend to her will. I laughed until my sides ached. Then I wrote her a response so short it could barely be called a letter. There is no community easement. I own the road. And I have the deed to prove it. And here was the twist, in the chaos of all the lawsuits and arguments. I had gone back through county records. Not only did my ranch sit outside HOA jurisdiction, but the very road Karen had claimed as community property wasn't public at all. It was mine. Paid for. Deeded in my name. Every SUV that had chewed up my gravel. Every bogus fine she had shoved into my mailbox. Every word she had screamed about community spirit. All of it crumbled in the face of one simple fact. She had been trespassing on my private road from the very beginning. I had held on to that knowledge like a loaded gun, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. And this was it. When Karen received my response, the meltdown was immediate. She stormed onto my property one final time, waving my letter in the air like a flag of defiance. Her voice cracked as she screamed, insisting that the road was for the community, that no man could own land that blocked progress, that it was impossible for me to hold the deed. But the truth is, the law doesn't bend for arrogance. I pointed her toward the county clerk's office. Check the records. Karen, the deed's in my name. Always has been. Her face drained of color, twisted into disbelief. She sputtered, stammered, stomped her heel into the dirt like a child denied candy. And then, finally, she turned on her heel and stormed off the property, leaving only the echo of her fury behind. From that day forward, the queen without a crown became a ghost. The HOA limped along, its board fractured and drained by legal fees. Members who once cowered under Karen's rule now spoke openly about her bullying, their voices rising in the safety of her absence. One by one, neighbors peeled back the layers of intimidation she had built and realized she had never been as powerful as she claimed her empire had collapsed, and with it, her identity. And me. I sat on my porch each evening, watching the sun set behind my indestructible gate, coffee warm in my hand, and thought about everything that had happened. Karen had tested my patience. She had tested my resolve. She had tested the very boundaries of my land and my dignity. And in the end, she had discovered the hard way what happens when you push a man too far. But I also knew one thing with absolute certainty. People like Karen never disappear entirely. They lie low, waiting, nursing their wounds until they find another angle, another fight. And if she ever tried again, I would be ready. Because the gate wasn't just stronger than before, so was I. When the dust of the courtroom settled and the shouting of the HOA faded into memory, Pine Hollow was a different place. The streets were quieter, the neighbors freer, the endless tide of violation notices, fines, and power plays had dried up with the fall of its queen. For the first time since I'd bought the ranch, my mornings felt exactly how I had pictured them all those years ago. The wind in the grass, the creak of the porch chair, the warm weight of a coffee mug in my hand. My dogs lounged at my feet. My cattle grazed in peace. And out front, my gate stood tall and unshaken. A sentinel that had not only guarded my land, but defended my dignity. Karen never drove through it again. She tried in her own way. Rumors swirled of her filing more complaints, whispering about petitions, even trying to rally support from what few board members still clung to her coattails. But no one listened anymore. The video of her SUV crumpling against my gate had burned itself into Pine Hollow's memory. Her reign was over. Her crown had been shattered by steel and truth. The HOA, once a mighty presence in the community, limped along quietly, reduced to squabbles over hedge heights and lawn ornaments. The neighbors who had once lived in fear of Karen's clipboard now swapped stories about her downfall, chuckling as though it were a local legend. And me, I had what I wanted all along. Peace. But here's the thing about stories like this. They're never just about the surface. This wasn't just about a gate, or a ranch, or even one woman's arrogance. It was about boundaries. Because in life, every person has a gate. Maybe yours isn't made of wood and steel. Maybe it's your time, your energy, your respect, or your peace of mind. But sooner or later, someone will come barreling through it, convinced they have a right to what's yours. They'll laugh at your warnings. They'll ignore your protests. They'll treat your no like it means nothing. And when that happens, you'll face a choice. You can repair the gate over and over, hoping they'll eventually respect it. Or you can do what I did. Reinforce it, strengthen it, and make it clear that some lines can't be crossed. Karen learned that lesson the hard way. She believed she was untouchable. That fines, threats, and SUVs made her invincible. But the truth is simple. Every bully eventually meets a wall they can't break. And sometimes, that wall looks a whole lot like a ranch gate. So when I sit on my porch now, watching the sun dip low behind my land, I don't just see cedar and steel. I see the reminder of a fight worth fighting. A fight to protect what's yours. And if there's one thing I want you to take from this story, it's this. Don't let anyone trample your boundaries. Build your gate. Reinforce it. And if someone refuses to respect it, stand your ground. Because at the end of the day, respect isn't given, it's earned. And sometimes, you have to demand it now. I've told you my story, but here's my question to you. What's the gate in your life that you need to protect? Drop it in the comments, and let's hear it. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because trust me, there are plenty more HOA battles, Karen dramas, and tales of sweet, sweet revenge coming your way. The ranch is quiet now. My gate stands strong, and Pine Hollow has a new legend whispered down its streets. The day Karen learned that some shortcuts come with a price.